Biden administration's made an unprecedented agreement with 5 Native American tribes to co-manage the region surrounding Bears Ears National Monument in Utah, which these tribes have inhabited for centuries now. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, who was the very first Native American to serve as a cabinet secretary, expressed how proud she is of this agreement, tweeting, quote, "This is what true tribal co-management should look like. And it's one step in how we honor our nation-to-nation relationships with these tribes." This comes as President Biden appointed Mary Malerba as U.S. Treasurer, making it the very first time a Native American signature will appear on U.S. currency, which is super cool. I love that so much. Joining us now, Alyssa London. She's the creator and producer of Culture Story, which facilitates conversations on identity. Why do you think it's so significant, this agreement, Alyssa, in terms of the relationship with the American government and Native American tribes?
Well, it's incredibly significant because it's a long time coming in recognizing the less than ideal history that the federal government has with tribes. And this is a step in the right direction to honoring the history and trying to make it right. But it by no means erases what happened over the better course of 200 plus years.
What are some of the things that these tribes want a say in terms of governing this land?
As tribal members, we really want a seat at the table, all tables, particularly when it comes to management of our lands. When I spoke to different tribal leaders, particularly some individuals at the Navajo Nation, their wisdom and knowledge of the spiritual places and just the points of interest of whether it's artifacts or places where they really want to make sure there's no logging that takes place. They know what should happen on the land better than others who don't have all of the centuries of history of how that land needs to be managed. And so that's why tribes should have a seat at the table.
We talk a lot on this show about how representation is important, and I can't help but notice that we have our first Native secretary in the cabinet, Secretary Deb Haaland, Interior Secretary. Do you think that that's contributing to really what I see as a renewed focus on issues that impact Native American communities because of that representation?
Absolutely. Representation is extremely important. And again, in talking with tribal leaders, they've pointed out that during the Obama administration, even the Bears Ears becoming a national monument was initially put into place, but was taken away during the Trump era. And so the Biden administration has taken a lot of strides in order to include more diverse perspectives at the table in all levels of government, including having Secretary Haaland as the first Secretary of the Interior. And I think it's a fair statement to say that all across Indian country, we are just really proud of Secretary Haaland's efforts to bring awareness to missing and murdered Indigenous women, to have hearings about the boarding school era, which was really the period of time in which our people were forcibly taken from our lands, particularly our children, and tried to be assimilated under this kill the Indian, save the man type idealism. And speaking with former president of the Navajo Nation, Russell Begay, he pointed out that one of the reasons that the Bears Ears National Monument is significant to Navajo people is that the Navajo people had their own period of Trail of Tears and were put into internment camps that were part of reservations. And so many of their people hid out in Bears Ears. And so it's just a place of sanctuary, and the connection to that land is incredibly important. Secretary Haaland helps to bring light to a lot of the marred history of our people.
One of the other things we noted at the top is Marilyn Malerba being on U.S. currency. I mean, we're not going to have a debate about capitalism, but I do think it's really, really cool to see that kind of representation. I even remember traveling to countries around the world and seeing like Black people on the money, and I was like, this is something I'm just not used to. Talk about the significance of having a Native American persons be appointed to treasurer and having their signature on U.S. currency.
I think it's another example of Native people taking a greater forefront in the minds of Americans, because now we're actually being seen more visibly as part of American history. For me, having when I attended Stanford, I was an intern for the Native American Finance Officers Association, and so much of protecting tribal sovereignty is also becoming economically independent, and that's why our community has organizations like the National Center of American Indian Enterprise Development, and the Mohegans, of which the new appointee is a lifetime chief of, are a very successful tribe from an economic standpoint. They have built businesses with global reach, and I think the Biden administration is starting to recognize that tribes have not only been able to maintain many of our cultural traditions, but we've also found a way to become quite successful in the Western ways that are prized, which is economics. And I think one of the ways to recognize that is to appoint the first Native American woman into this position, and we're very proud of her.
Alyssa London, it's been great to have you and to have this conversation. Thank you so much for being here today, and please stay safe. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.